everybody, welcome to another GeneaVlogger live stream. I am Jarrett Ross, the GeneaVlogger, and today I have as my guest the wonderful Max Miller of Tasting History with Max Miller. How you doing today, Max?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Well,
oh, there's the comment
so
section. Now I can see it.
Yeah. So for those who aren't familiar yet, we had Max on as a guest for my series, the YouTuber Family Tree series, where I built out Max's family tree. So we're going to be talking about that today. We also have some stuff we'll be going over that has not been released yet, including some stuff that Max has not seen. So I have a little surprise for you today, Max, that I think you're going to enjoy. And some of the stuff that we have is going to be a little preview to the next episode, which is going to get into the World War II history with your grandfather, Ross Miller.
Yes.
So I do have it as a goal, I guess, where if 10 people do one of the super stickers, then once that gets reached, we'll show the video. If we don't reach that by the time it's up, I think within 15 minutes of when we're going to end this, then I'll go ahead and probably play the video anyway. But yeah, I guess to start...
You're not supposed to say that.
Forget I said that. I'm too nice. I'll put it... Actually, let's do this. I have a short trailer and then I have a little extended trailer. So if we reach the goal, we'll do the extended one. So a little bit longer. Includes basically the extended one will be some stuff that Max's dad was talking about when I met with them in Phoenix about what he knew of his father's World War II service. But if we don't reach the goal, we'll still show the shorter version, which we'll go into some of that. So to start, Max, I would just love to hear kind of your just general thoughts on, when I first reached out to you and asked you about joining and kind of getting into everything.
Well, yeah, when you reached out, it was kind of perfect timing because I've always been interested in our family history. I just love history of any kind, but shortly before you reached out, my cousin had started to really delve into our family history on my mother's side. And so, it was it was cool then that you reached out and was like, oh, well, maybe you can find some even more stuff and everything. And we have a slew of photos that you can already kind of use and everything. Because she had found a bunch of photos and documents at my Nana's house after she passed away and had kind of collected them. Yeah, so no, it was just exciting. And then the stuff that you found out, I knew some stuff, but you found out so much stuff that we didn't know. And more interestingly, you found out some stuff that we thought we knew that turned out to be erroneous. And that's actually the stuff that I found was most interesting.
Yeah. Do you want to elaborate what stuff that is? Or I don't know if that... I know we have a lot of stuff that haven't come out yet.
There were honestly a bunch of things, but mostly it had to do with my papa, my mother's father's maternity and paternity, who his real parents were, because we had always been told, and he had always been told, that he had been... So we knew he was adopted, but I think he was supposedly the son of a teacher at Oxford or Cambridge who had an affair with somebody who was related not by blood, and then she had to come to the United States to to give birth and then put him up for adoption. And some of that ended up being sort of true, but not the whole story. And the people ended up, they were not English. They weren't from England at all. They were from, what was it? Minnesota? Was it Michigan, Minnesota? One of those M states?
Pennsylvania.
Well, Pennsylvania, but then the teacher was in Minnesota. Crowland?
Okay, well, yeah. So they went from Pennsylvania to Minnesota to the Carleton College. Yeah.
But so long story short, it was a woman who had his mother had an affair with her sister's husband. And we don't know any details about it because they didn't write it down. So I'm not sure if the word affair is appropriate. It might be, but it also might be a little more nefarious. I have no way of knowing. But so, he always wanted to know who his true parents were, and he never did because he was put up for adoption like, was it weeks after he was born? Days?
Pretty
It was kind of
quickly.
like right away.
Yeah.
So he never really knew, and so it's just cool that between DNA and wonderful research and documentation on your part, we were able to find out that family secret from all these years.
Yeah, yeah. I think when I contacted you, that was one of the first things you had mentioned in terms of things you'd like to find out was who was your grandfather's
Yeah,
biological family.
that was always the big question mark. So it's nice to have it. I mean, it's nice to have it answered. It's not really nice the way that the answer came through, but better to know than not, I suppose.
Yeah, but I did find it interesting. I think for especially your grandfather's mother, the similarities, both how she looked, and as well just kind of the fact that her and all of her siblings were in education, and then
That's what's crazy. My
yeah,
family is a family of educators, um, mainly on my mother's side. So this family that we are blood related to, but have no connection to in reality because he was put up for adoption. They were all teachers, and like teaching was in their blood. Well, my grandmother was a teacher, so my grandmother was a teacher. My mother was a teacher. My sister was a teacher. My sister-in-law is a teacher. She's not blood related, obviously, and in a way, I am a teacher, just not in a classroom. But there is
you're
something
an
about that, like
educator.
need to tell stories and need to educate, and maybe a need to prove that you know more than other people. All
Well,
comes
with
from a
that, I
place
think
of insecurity, I'm sure.
we're gonna jump to our first super sticker from Ryan Sargent. Max, love your stuff. My wife and I use your cookbook all the time. It's fantastic and healthy. We've started home cooking almost every night. Keep it up.
Nice. Thank you, Ryan. Home cooking every night. That is that is a lot. So good on you. I wish I had it in me. After I've been like yesterday, I ended up cooking 5 different dishes to make shorts, and the last thing I wanted to do then was actually cook dinner.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's tough when you spend all day cooking. I don't know if I ever told you this actually, and I don't even know if I've ever said this on stream, but I used to work in kitchens for years as a chef, and especially as a prep chef. And as a
Ooh,
prep
I did not
chef,
know that.
that
That's
was
hard.
just nonstop, get there early in the morning. And I worked at a barbecue place, so I'd be pulling out the pork butts that we had in the smoker from overnight, putting in the ribs, and then you make all this stuff, and then you finish and you're just like, I don't want to do it anymore.
I worked at a restaurant. I was never in the kitchen. I was always front of house, but I worked in a restaurant, and every morning the first guy in was the avocado guy. The restaurant served guacamole, like almost every table ordered guacamole.
Yeah.
And the first thing that he did when he came in was, and basically all day, I swear it was the only thing that he did, was slice avocados in half. And then it always scared me because I thought he was going to cut his hand off. He would chop into the nut and pull it out in the seed, twist and pull.
That's how
Like
I did it.
hundreds and hundreds of them. And then he would have to wrap them because otherwise they go, like brown real
They
quick. So he had
oxidize.
to be prepared because it was all about speed and everything. It was crazy.
Yeah, there was the trick that I know some restaurants use where you squeeze a little lemon juice or you keep a lemon wrapped up
Yeah.
with the avocado.
Yeah. Because I think
Yeah.
he would like scoop it out and then, so he would cut it, he would scoop it out and then put it into a big bowl. That's what it was. And then wrap that bowl up. That's what it was. It was just it was he every day he had like this mound of avocados at the beginning of the day at like 6 a.m.
Leslie, thank you so much for the super sticker. And then we have one more right now. Drea, hoping to kick off a super chat chain. What's y'all's favorite historical place or time to research?
I
actually do know mine. Mine easily is 18th century and 19th century Amsterdam. But that's largely because that's like my main focus for my family. So it even gets more specific. 18th century, 19th century Jews of Amsterdam.
That is specific.
So,
all right, I was going to say I've been researching that this morning, but you lost me at the Jewish part because I don't think the guy that I'm researching is Jewish. And actually, I think he's late 17th century. He's the first guy
with some of the Jews.
He's the first man to figure out how to propagate pineapples in Europe in any decent quantity. He developed a way to create large greenhouses that were effective. Anyway, my favorite time period changes based on what I am reading. I am so swayable, but it also makes my job really easy because basically whatever I'm reading is my favorite time period. But what I love going back to the Middle Ages, namely England, and mid 19th century America, the lead up to the Civil War, and shortly into the aftermath, Reconstruction. But Reconstruction depresses me. So usually it's the lead up, which should also be depressing, but at least it's like, oh, there's something coming. Whereas Reconstruction, the something coming was the utter failure of Reconstruction.
Yeah. So the next question that I wanted to ask you was, having now learned so much more about your ancestry, has that changed how you've looked at a lot of history? And even more, has that changed how, when you're doing certain episodes, how you kind of thought of things during your research?
You know what? The first thing that comes to mind is it. So, in the first thing that we ever worked together on, that you kind of told me was about the oyster planters in New York off Long Island that were my family. And I'm not a huge fan of oysters, especially raw oysters. I have a weird texture thing. And so when I was researching it, I was like, I feel like I should like oysters more than I do. It's in my blood, but it is clearly not. And that's why the recipe that I chose for that episode ended up being baked oysters, because I like them when they're baked because the flavor is fine. But the texture of a raw oyster. And I've tried multiple times. I just can't get it. But other than that, I have always, you know what it is? I've always imagined my family in different periods that I'm researching. It's like, I bet if my great-great-grandfather, or, somebody who I was related to, but it was all fictional in my head. I have no idea. Whereas now I know that I had not one but two ancestors on the Mayflower, I believe we established.
I think so. At least one for sure.
The
spoiler alert for
famous one. We won't throw out, because that's a really good story that's going to come up. But so I feel like now when I'm researching that time, it's like, oh, my people were there, and it's kind of weird because I have really nothing in common with that guy, especially when you learn what he did. I have nothing more in common with that guy than some other random person who lived in, Siam in the 17th century when it was still called Siam. But for some reason, in my mind, we do make that connection. And I think that that's why Americans especially are like, I'm German, even though they've never been to Germany, let alone born there. It's because like we just have this like way of connecting with our own past, even if it's all in our head. And that's okay.
It is. It is. I know. I see that question a lot from, or that statement, even better to say, from Europeans of why do Americans care so much about what they are? Why do they care about their ancestry? But it's interesting to me, especially having an audience that's largely in Europe as well, who are obsessed with their genealogy. Because anyone watching me is obsessed with their genealogy for the
Yeah.
most part.
Yeah. Well, and I think that for so many Americans, it's because of where their ancestors came from that is that linchpin that turned them American. That, many people who left Europe or China or India or Mexico or wherever to come to America, there was a very specific reason that they did it. It wasn't just on a lark. Whereas most Europeans are where they're from just because that's where they happen to stop at some point in history. There are, of course, people who did move from one area to another, Sephardic Jews, especially, things like that, where it's like you have to go. And so, but for a lot of people, it was like, well, yeah, my people are from England because we've been from England for 2,000 years. There is
Yeah.
no story there.
Yeah.
So I think that that's maybe where some of the interest comes from. It's like, why did my people leave Scotland? Why did my people leave Ireland? And it's interesting. It is interesting.
Yeah. Now, I know we kind of already answered this a little bit, but I guess talking about some of the surprising finds that we had in this series, and you can talk about stuff that we haven't covered yet. I know we just mentioned the Mayflower ancestor, which I think out of all of the reactions from your family, that was probably the biggest reaction.
It was the most yeah. We still talk about it. We're like, yeah. I don't want to
Oh, we have
spoil
some
it.
more super stickers I just noticed. History cooking channel besides Max and Townsend.
Ooh.
I'm not familiar. Maybe Max.
There is one that I enjoy watching. They don't talk. It's like early 19th century American cooking in the wilderness ASMR. That's not the name of the channel, but that's essentially what it is. American cooking history ASMR. I'm literally looking up right now.
Yeah.
Yep, Early American. The channel is called Early American. And
there you go.
it's a wonderful channel. But for the most part, they don't cook. But it's all, in period clothing. They have a cabin that they cook in. It's really lovely. And then Glenn and Friends, a very different take. Not all of his stuff is historic cooking. In fact, I think the majority of it isn't. But when he does historic cooking, he's just like charming and feels like a cup of hot cocoa when you're watching him. So that's why I like watching Glenn and Friends.
Very cool. And then we have a super sticker from Eve Cotton. $3 from California. Thank you so much, Eve. I know I've seen Eve commenting a lot, and she follows both of us. So very cool. Very cool. So I guess we might as well dive into the special thing that I have for you. Which will lead in a little bit to the video. We're actually getting pretty close with donations, I think. Where are we at? Oh, interesting. It's only counting 2 of them. There's been more. We'll count it as 5. We're halfway there. So this was not something that I had actually found when I met with you and your family in Phoenix. And this is something that is related to your grandfather's World War II service, in that it is a record of where he was serving, and he was serving in a medical detachment. And it's the page about the mess department from October to December of 1945 for where your grandfather was serving.
Oh, cool.
So
he would have been in what, Hamburg at that time?
I think it was Frankfurt at this time.
Frankfurt, yes, Frankfurt.
So we're gonna make that larger. So this is what his experience would have been with the food, obviously. And I'll just read through it. During the period of this report, Army personnel has been reduced from 60 to 27, a large number of which have been recently assigned here, including the mess officer, Lieutenant Charles F. Leach, MAC. During the past 5 months, 3 messes have been operating: patients, officers, and detachment. Food is prepared for officers and patients in one kitchen. The detachment mess serves approximately 1,500 meals per day. Efforts are being made to continually improve building and equipment conditions of the detachment mess. At present, the building is being enlarged and remodeled, after which it will be painted. Several pieces of modern kitchen equipment have been installed, including an electric coffee machine, electric fryers, and gas grills. During a 30-day period, 48,000 meals are served, 24,750 to patients, and 28,250 to the detachment members. Scroll down a little bit. There are employed 112 German civilians, included are 11 cooks and 6 bakers, the remainder being used as KPs and waiters. The quality of the meals during the month of November was lower than at any other time of the year. This was owing to a shortage of shipping space from the United States and a surplus of canned meats in this theater. However, at present, the issue is normal and meals are improving considerably.
That's fascinating.
So, I'm hoping to find more on this. I think I mentioned this in one of the emails I sent you in the lead up to this, but I've found someone who knows a lot about the unit your grandfather served in. And so I'm going to be interviewing them hopefully soon, which will be included in the final episode. One reason it hasn't come out yet. There's always some fun thing I find that's like, I have to include this.
No, that's awesome.
So this would have been in Frankfurt, Germany, for 3 months. So if you went back to late 1945, you'd know your grandfather was eating lots of canned meats.
Lots of canned meats. That's crazy. That's so cool that like you have documentation from the place he was eating. That is really cool.
Yeah. So
that's the nice thing about military records. They really kept a lot of good records, you know.
Yeah, they did. Well, they did and they didn't. And I guess this will be in the video we watch at whatever point we do that at. But a lot of records relating to World War II personnel specifically were destroyed in a fire in 1973. And so we don't have a lot of the personnel records. We have a lot of these sorts of records where it's kind of like the general, I forgot exactly what they're called. I guess just an annual report or just these generalized reports talking about things. But so like this one is for the unit your grandfather served in, the 97th General Hospital. So we got a lot on that. So, but yeah, for your grandfather's unit, it's been one of the most difficult units for me to find information about.
Really?
Yeah. And when I finally got in touch with this person who I'll be interviewing, I mentioned that, and she said, I'm not surprised. There's almost nothing out there. And then on top of that, one of the things that made it difficult is this is the 97th General Hospital. And for anyone who's in the American military and served in Germany, you might be like, oh, I know that place because it served as the hospital for American personnel in Frankfurt, Germany, well after World War II. So when you research 97th General Hospital, almost nothing comes up about World War II for them. It's all about post-World War II.
Right.
In fact, like I one of the tricks with genealogy a lot of people don't know is there are all sorts of groups on Facebook related to very specific things. So, like, as an example, for your family, your grandfather's father was in Uniontown, Pennsylvania. And we found that there was all this history with Uniontown, Pennsylvania. Well, I joined a Facebook group about Uniontown history. And there's a Facebook group specifically for that. But I tried to find one for the 97th General Hospital, because you can usually find a lot of different ones for different units, because there's always some person who's obsessed with one specific unit for some specific reason.
Yeah.
And everything I found was just for everyone who served in 97 General Hospital from 1970 to 1975. And it was all the actual people that served, it wasn't about the history.
Yeah.
So, but the person that I'll be interviewing is probably going to be writing the first book about the unit's history.
Okay.
So, yeah, just to give an idea of how important this person is really to telling this full story.
I love it.
Yeah. We got another super sticker in here, Douglas Huseman for 149. Thank you so much for that, Doug. So that brings us up to 6. So we have 4 more to go before we get to that. But I'm gonna take a quick look for some questions from chat. Obviously, questions through super stickers will get priority. But if you do have questions for Max about the YouTube series or the family history, most especially, please post that in the chat. And if you see any, Max, that you want to answer, feel free. I think you should be able to scroll through them. And I guess this is also a good shout out. Please join the GeneaVlogger Discord server if you do enjoy genealogy. You want to get help with researching your family tree. There's a very robust community on there, and a lot of people who especially like to help everybody in building out their family trees. So let's see if we can find any good questions. See a lot of people chatting about their own family history, which is really cool. I think I saw the exact same one that made you react that way.
Yes, just no. I'm good. Is Max Miller's family tree on WikiTree? What is WikiTree?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so WikiTree is one of the collaborative family trees. So I don't know if you're on WikiTree. I know there are family of yours, ancestors and cousins that I've researched, but I did not put your tree on WikiTree. So I doubt it's in there in like an intact way, but it is on Genie. I don't have it as what's called a master profile, which is where it's like a public thing. So I think I connected you into that, Max. I can't remember. I think I sent you an invite. But either way, WikiTree is what's known as a collaborative family tree, and collaborative family trees are where it's a world family tree. So if you put your grandfather in there and someone already has your grandfather's profile, you just merge that together, and now you're working from one similar tree. So it allows you to build these big trees, and that's what allows us to find those like crazy distant connections. So I focus my work in collaborative work on Genie. I do my secondary amount on WikiTree, and then there's a third one called Family Search, which is run by the Mormon Church, the Church of the Latter-day Saints of Jesus Christ. Is that it? I can never remember if I say that correctly. LDS.
LDS.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's just what a collaborative tree is in WikiTree. So I don't know Eric, if you're one of the WikiTreers, I do see John Tyner is here. John Tyner is one of our WikiTreer fans. Yeah, I mean, you could probably end up getting it on there with the info that I have on the episodes already. The only side that you probably would have the biggest trouble with, especially in the fact that recently we kind of disproved it's a connection, actually goes back to what we were talking about before, and is funny from what you said, the oyster planters. Because even though the family records point to them being your ancestors. DNA and
they're not my blood ancestors.
they're not your blood. There's what we call an NPE, not paternity expected.
Right.
And basically what it was is that I'm not sure if it's your grandmother's father or his father. I have to look back. I think it was Harold Holtz's father.
Yeah.
So I have to stop my robot vacuum. Decided to start right now.
Well, and that's always the, that's the thing, because do you do genealogy based on DNA and blood, or do you do genealogy based on actual familial connections? Like, if I found out that my parents were not my parents tomorrow, they'd still be my parents. I wouldn't give a fig about the two people that actually did it to make me. It's, so even though we're not blood related to them because my Nana's grandfather got up to shenanigans, that doesn't mean that they're not still family, So that's always kind of what's interesting, and especially when, like in the case of my papa, there's an adoption. It's like his parents were his adopted parents, not the I mean, the story is interesting, and I understand why you would want to know, but yeah.
I think it's definitely one of those things where both sides are important.
Yeah.
And even in a sense, in a genetic level, if you start getting into the whole idea of epigenetics and how environment affects your DNA and things like that. And so, you're, even if they're not your biological family, the family that's raising you, the atmosphere and everything that's created around that, if it's having an effect on your epigenetics, still it's technically a DNA connection in a sense, although that's
Right.
kind of left field. But I think that's one of the ways that I always try to go about it, is always including both. And a lot of family tree softwares these days allow you to have that, where you can have adoptive parents and biological parents, and then some even allow you to have step parents in there and foster parents and all of that. But it's all part of the story of you, which is really what genealogy comes down to. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting conversation, especially when when that is your ancestry. Your grandfather's adoptive family had a big influence on how he lived and grew up, and that it had an influence on how your mom and her siblings lived and grew up, and then with you and your siblings. And yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I saw a question here. Will Max do more videos that are not so Eurocentric? Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'll tell you. So I'm actually working on one right now that is not at all. It's using this book. Can't really read it, but it's a Filipino dish called pancit. However, making this video has taken about 3 times as long as another video. And that's one of many reasons why I don't do more. So one reason a lot of my videos tend to be Eurocentric is because I like European history. But another reason is because Europe has such a strong tradition of writing down recipes. And since for the most part, my videos are based on historic recipes, if a culture doesn't have a tradition of writing down their recipes, it makes it very hard to make a video about it. And then the other thing is, certain cultures either don't have a lot of written sources, or they did and they have been destroyed, sometimes on purpose, or they haven't been translated, and I have trouble finding people to translate certain things. So again, it usually comes down to, like, if I want to make a video about something that I have here in a cookbook that is in English and I can read it, or if it's in French or German or Italian and I can translate it, maybe it'll take 15 to 20 hours to do the research. I believe that I have spent about 60 hours researching this. Well, I can't do that every week. One of the Chinese videos that I did a few years back, I spent well over 80 hours myself, and I had to get someone who knew how to read the Chinese of the 18th century to give me an accurate translation. But I didn't know where in this book there was a recipe. I just knew that it had a recipe because I had found another document that talked about it. So he spent 10 hours looking through this document to find the recipe, because they're not always easy to read if they haven't been digitized in a certain way, or they're just next to impossible to get. Like, I know that there is a museum in Tokyo that has all of these wonderful documents from the 15th, 16th, and 17th century about kind of like actual recipes or descriptions of food, but they haven't digitized them. So unless I go there and get a permission to see it, I can't see it. And the other reason is, for me, one of my favorite things is teaching via first person or, primary sources. And so I have a video coming up that I'm working on right now about pineapples, and why pineapples had been in South and Central America for hundreds, if not thousands of years. But almost all of the history is European that I'm talking about, because they're the ones that wrote their thoughts about pineapples down. So I have stuff to actually quote and discuss. So that's why it is harder. But I do make a lot of non-Eurocentric videos. They just tend not to do nearly as well. And so they don't get pushed out. So I'll have somebody, I recently had somebody say, why haven't you done something on Indian cooking? I've done several Indian videos, but they just never saw them because they didn't get pushed out. So that's part of the YouTube algorithm, and I have no control over that puppy. Let me tell you, if I did, master of the universe. So part of it is, what do people want to watch? What do I like to make? And a lot of it is what's easier to make, because I put out a video every week. And so it's just like, okay, if I know that this video is going to take me several weeks to make, then I have to choose several really easy videos to make to support that, because at about 60 hours of work a week, my brain shuts off. And frankly, I don't really like working 60 hours a week. So someday I won't.
Yeah, that sounds like a serious amount of research.
Yeah, it just makes it a lot harder, to find certain documents, to translate certain documents. I was very fortunate to find this book because it does actually say where a lot of these older recipes, and they don't go back very far, because they don't go back before the Spanish and then Americans started writing down the recipes. So the recipe that I'm using is the oldest one in known existence. That's from 1913. So it's not that old, but I'm also trying to play with not always having a written recipe. It kind of gets away from my original idea of the show, but it allows me to do things like the video on Ötzi the Iceman. We have no recipe for what he ate. I want to do a video on what Neanderthals ate in certain parts of the world. No recipe, but we have archaeological evidence that I can kind of piece together, and those videos really become more about the history than the food itself.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. I'm super excited to see the pineapple video.
I'm super excited to try the recipe, because it's very different from anything that you would find on a dessert menu today.
Here's a good question. Has Max done a video of Mayflower meals not including Thanksgiving?
I talked a bit about what they were eating on the ship and when they first got to what's now, the Plymouth area. I did talk about that. I think it was in the first Thanksgiving video. I can't remember. They all kind of blend together. I have about 2 weeks of memory. I can remember videos that I did 2 weeks ago, and then it dissolves. I think I did. I could probably do more. The thing is, what they were eating on the Mayflower is the same thing that everyone ate on ships for a period of 400 years or so, and I've done a lot on what people have eaten on ships, and I have more coming up. I'm going to be doing a video on Nelson and what his ships were eating, Admiral Nelson, Admiral Lord Nelson. But again, it's a lot of lobscouse, hardtack, and grog. It's not much more. Salt pork.
Well, grog leads perfectly into this. Are we getting to get more drinking history?
Yes. However, I have made a promise to myself to not do any. So usually the drinking history videos are on Fridays and they're a little shorter and everything, though sometimes they end up being just as long. So I am going to be covering some alcohols and other beverages. I want to make a root beer video and everything, but they'll actually probably end up being on Tuesdays, and I'll probably call them tasting history. I'm not even sure, but I've made a promise to myself that I will not make any more Friday videos until I have finished my next cookbook, because I keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And I have a concept. I have a list of most of the recipes and everything, but I actually just need to do the work. So that could take the next 6 months if I'm lucky.
Then we have Mika Eld again. Thanks for a great answer, Max. And another chatter already clued me in on your other videos.
Oh, good. Good.
And then Julia Joyce with £4.99. I'm a social historian. Love your videos. My autistic daughter gets excited spotting your Pokemon, and she tells me their names and elements.
Very nice. Well, then hopefully she can also, not always, but we try to have them have some sort of connection to the video. And it's not always obvious. Sometimes you really have to know the Pokemon, or really pay attention to the video, because it might be one line that I say in there that will kind of tie it in. But a lot of people enjoy that game. But then once in a while, we have nothing that goes, so we just put a random Pokemon, and people are like, I can't figure out the connections.
Now, I'm curious, is it you that likes Pokemon, or is it Jose, or both of you? Jose, okay.
I like Pokemon. He loves Pokemon. That is his thing. I did not know Pokemon until I met him and he introduced me. I was going to say foisted, but that sounds wrong. So he introduced me to Pokemon. Now I enjoy it.
I saw the photo you all posted of the closet with all the Pokemon.
The avalanche of Pokemon. Yeah, that is his office. That is his office.
Wow. Well, we're up to 9, and we have about 17 minutes left. So I'll give it a couple more minutes, because we just need one more to get to watch the extended version. I definitely want to play that one for sure. But then afterwards, I definitely want to get your...
I have to answer this one because this is a passion of mine. Somebody just asked, what's your favorite Great British Bake Off challenge that aired / inspired you? So the Great British Bake Off is why Tasting History exists. Watching the Great British Bake Off is what got me baking in the first place. I had never cooked or baked in general. And it was the history sections on the early seasons that disappeared that I wanted to recreate because I missed them so much. And that's really what Tasting History is. But it was the Battenberg cake. That is the first thing that I ever baked after watching the show. And I loved the history behind it and the Battenberg family and all that. So yeah, definitely the Battenberg.
Cool. Very cool. And then loving this crossover so much. Well, thank you so much, Katie. I know every time, I've had 2 episodes, but both times I've had the episodes come out, I get a ton of comments of, "Oh, I've been watching both of your channels. I love this crossover." So, anything from Sub-Saharan?
Riz, I'm sure we've discussed this, Riz. So I know Riz very well. We were just talking today, actually. So I want to do. Gosh, now it's just gone out of my head. It's a type of rice. It's a rice dish that has just gone out of my head. Jollof, which is Sub-Saharan and North Sahara, in the Sahara. But yes, so the answer is yes. I just haven't gotten to it.
Very cool. And this is actually my cousin. This is my fourth cousin once removed, Catherine Michael, who I've hung out with a couple times. We actually went to a comedy show in Philly together. But when are you coming over for a foodie tour? she lives in England, I should say.
Oh, possibly later this year. We're going to be in Europe twice and possibly 3 times this year on different trips that bring me over there. And one of them might bring us to England and Scotland, even though I was just there. But I never get tired of it. So
a question I have for you on that is, any of the family history you've learned influenced your upcoming trips?
No. because I'm not, most of these trips I'm not planning, they're planned for me. I'm brought over.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I have little say in it. I am along for the ride and glad to be so. Definitely one of the perks of the job.
Well, one place I definitely hope you end up going, and I'm looking forward to whenever you do, seeing what your feeling is there, is when you get to Cornwall, because that, your father's mother's, or not your father, your grandfather's mother's side, it's just all Cornish.
Yeah, and it would be a wonderful reason to make a video on Cornish pasties. So
yeah. So let's see if we have any other questions. I might have missed it all this time, but do you post your sources for the history sections in your videos?
For the most part, yes. Most of them are, because I cite them in the video itself. So often when I do that, because unless I have like a link that you can then go see the source itself, and a lot of the times that's not necessarily the case, or it's hard to find. So usually it's kind of internally cited as opposed to like a bibliography. But then if you go onto my website, pretty much everything that I use at least regularly is all in there. But I don't create like a proper bibliography like my mother, who was an English teacher, would surely like me to do, where I cite the exact, simply because all I would be doing is making a bibliography, and I would make half as many episodes. But that's why the great thing with Google is I'll give the quote and I'll give exactly where it's from, and all you got to do is Google it with the quotation marks around it, and then you can usually find it yourself.
Oh, wow. And we got 2 super stickers coming in at once. So after we go through these, we'll watch the extended version of the video. Nice. We have the $3 from Douglas Hughesman, who I think donated a bit before. So thank you again for donating 2 times. And then we have another from Mika. Any Max collabs with historical brewers?
Nothing planned. That doesn't mean that it couldn't happen, but nothing planned at the moment. It would be cool, but nothing planned. Use ChatGPT to create your bibliography. I don't even know how to use ChatGPT. I've never been on ChatGPT. And that's because, from what I have gleaned, a lot of the stuff that comes off of ChatGPT is incorrect. So,
Yeah, yes, it's good for workflow. I actually teach about
it
this for
probably is. You
genealogy,
know,
how to use.
I'm
Yeah,
such a
but it's
Luddite.
not.
I
Yeah, no,
like I was telling you, I didn't even know. I wouldn't be able to set up a stream. There's
yeah,
absolutely no way. That's why my videos are filmed the way that they're filmed. People are like, "Oh, you should have more shots of food and everything." And I'm like, "I got one camera and I'm the only one who uses it and I'm in front of it, so it's not moving." So
yeah.
it's very simple.
Well, I remember after we met up, I think I told you about this when you loaded the video that we'd shot of everything onto my hard drive. You'd also uploaded the raw footage from the video that you had just made. And so when I was going through it, it was just like all these single shots of you like mixing something in a bowl. And it was just really funny just kind of being able to see that like background, like, oh, okay, so this is, I can see how he pieces it together.
Yep.
But then it also answered some other questions for me too, because I was like, does he just do it all in one go and nothing's going on? But then I started watching some clips and I saw like you could hear the TV in the background.
Always. Yeah, no, I got the TV or YouTube playing always in the background.
So
That's why I could never do an ASMR. People are like, "Oh, you should do ASMR cooking." And I'm like, "But then I can't listen to music." while I'm filming. I'm going to film there in silence? Absolutely not. I can't do it. Don't leave me alone with my thoughts.
All right, so we're gonna do the extended preview. Now, technically, you've seen this because you're, in the video, but you haven't actually seen the video itself. I can find it. Where did I save this? So hopefully I do this right so that it will share audio. Will it not? It's not going to share the audio, is it? All right, we're going to have to wait just a second while I get it in a way to do the audio. But while I do that, let's see if there's a... Feel free to answer any questions you see in the chat.
Somebody said, I don't know who the question was for necessarily, but mentioned a run-in with Lucy Worsley and Tracy Borman. So when I was in York last summer, yeah, I think it was last summer, we were walking down the street and everything like stopped and there was a camera, and in front of the camera was Lucy Worsley, who is just this wonderful British historian, and we stood there and watched her filming whatever it was, but we couldn't hear her, so I had no idea what she was talking about. Well, then recently a show just came out on PBS, and she was talking about 1066 and the Bayeux Tapestry and William the Conqueror. And that shot was in the documentary. So I was like, oh, that's what she was talking about. It was so cool. She's brilliant. Lucy Worsley.
Interesting. Oh. All right, I've got it.
IT support, it seems. You have no idea. I have no support in that. Jose knows more about it than I do, but I'm usually not willing to ask for help. That's why I work alone. Oh, there's my family.
There we go. So we'll play this. If the audio doesn't work, if the audio doesn't work, please let me know in the chat, but it should work. Yeah, we'll just chat about it afterwards. So this is a preview to the upcoming episode 3. Now, what do you know about his time in the military?
He went in and he was a conscientious objector. He went through basic and everything, and they said, fine, we'll put you on the front line without a gun. And then he followed the armies around in hospitals. I know. Remember him talking about during D-Day, he worked in a big hospital set up in Oxford. That's where the Oxford
That's right.
And then he was Frankfurt, Germany. I think he was in, where is Mannequin Peace? Brussels? I think he was in Brussels. Anyway.
Records for World War II vets are oddly sparse because there was a fire at an archive one year and destroyed a whole bunch of stuff. So the majority of records that we get usually have to come through FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests. We've submitted one. It's there. We're waiting for them to respond. It takes them a while. But we can still learn about his career through the newspapers, once again. So the first one here, we have January 11th, 1943, 30 Newton Countians leave for service, and he's listed as the first person on that list. So 1943, he's off to train. Then Wednesday, April 19th, 1944, Private First Class Ross M. Miller has arrived in England according to information received by his sister, Miss Lucille Barker of Joplin.
She was already married.
July 8th, 1944, so a couple of months ahead. Private First Class Ross M. Miller, stationed in England. Now, this is really weird because they missed up 2 lines. So this third line should be the 4th line. So it should read, Private First Class Ross M. Miller, stationed in England, has been promoted to corporal according to information received by Nova Miller of Joplin, Route 30. So whoever was doing the newspaper did that backwards.
Congratulations.
So he gets promoted. Then, August 3rd, 1944, Miss Nova Miller has received information that her son, Norman M. Miller, apprentice seaman, is stationed at the Great Lakes Training Station. Another son, Corporal Ross M. Miller, is with a medical detachment in England.
I noticed that I'm wearing the same shirt right now that I was wearing in that when we filmed that. I swear I have more clothes. I do have like 3 of these shirts because that's how I buy clothes. When I find something that fits, I'm like, I'll get a bunch of them. But I do.
I do the same thing called it. I have a promo photo of me with a polo that I like to wear a lot, and it's like one of 3 polos I like to wear. So this preview of the upcoming episode, which is going to talk about your grandfather's World War II service. Any thoughts after watching that clip?
Well, I was there.
Yeah.
I just think that the coolest thing is that newspapers at that time were so like detail oriented about the people of the town. I mean, Joplin wasn't, it wasn't Philadelphia or anything, but still to be putting, this person arrived in England is just interesting. And it was a cool thing, especially with so many young men and women gone, being able to keep up with the people that you knew back at home. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny thinking now when you can just go to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and get an update on almost anybody that you've connected with over the years. But back then, it really was you go to the newspaper, and it is funny. Look, I'm sure you've probably seen this too, being that you utilize newspapers so often in your research. But there's always these like local sections of Lucy came to visit her cousins this weekend for a cup of tea, and just the most mundane thing.
So I'm looking up this video. I'm doing research on the history of Girl Scout cookies, and I just before this, and I pulled up a newspaper from the 1923 with the original recipe for Girl Scout cookies, and so I'm reading this, and then my eye kind of moves over, and the next column is talking about some guy who got pulled over for driving. It sounds like intoxicated, and it's embarrassing him for this small community. It's boy, I'm glad we don't have that anymore. Though I guess today we put all of our embarrassing stuff just up on Instagram and TikTok and stuff, and it's a way to gain clout. So maybe it's the same. But I just love newspapers because I always find what I'm looking for, but then I love kind of looking around it, and it's this is especially when you go back further to the 18th and early 19th century, because it will just tell about Lady Grey had a party on Friday, and she had 18 guests, 2 of which never emerged from the house after the party. I mean, it's just like gossip columns about people's private life. It's just so interesting. So interesting.
So cool, so cool. Yeah, I love researching through newspapers. So much fun, and especially with those back then, it was just 4 pages of craziness.
Yep, like we got to fill the space. So
yeah. So, well, with that, I think we're here at the hour. So I want to thank you so much again for joining me for the live stream and being a guest on this series. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm excited to see the rest of the videos, especially that Mayflower one. Everybody keep an eye out for that Mayflower one.
Yeah, there's so much stuff we covered. So much stuff. So, and thank you everybody for joining today. I really appreciate it. Be sure to like, subscribe, hop on over to Discord if you want to check that out and get help with your own genealogy. I'm sure a lot of folks over here from Max's channel haven't done that yet. So dive on into your family history and learn all this stuff. So thank you all again. You have a wonderful, wonderful night. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.